Chronic ankle pain may be more than just a sprain. Ankle sprains are a common injury after a fall, sudden twist or blow to the ankle joint. Approximately 40% of those who suffer an ankle sprain will experience chronic ankle pain, even after being treated for their initial injury. A review article published in the May 2009 issue of the Journal of the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons (JAAOS) explains that tendon injuries to the ankle can be a possible cause for this chronic pain. In some cases, the condition is untreated or overlooked, which prolongs the pain and the problem. When patients injure their ankles, the injury may not seem serious at first, explains Terence Philbin, DO, lead author of the article and fellowship director of the Orthopedic Foot and Ankle Center in Columbus, Ohio. People may not seek medical attention and they can think it will just get better on its own. I think that is why this condition often goes undiagnosed. The authors of the article describe how in some cases chronic ankle pain may actually be the result of injuries to the peroneal tendons. The peroneal tendons are located behind the outside portion of the ankle bone, called the fibula. The tendons help to stabilize the foot and ankle. Tendon injuries can include tendinitis or swelling around the tendons. In more severe cases, the peroneal tendons can actually tear, or there can be a swelling of the tendons behind the fibula bone. This can cause the ligament that holds the tendons together to stretch out and tear, or even rupture. Symptoms associated with peroneal tendon injuries can include ankle pain that is not responding to treatment, swelling and tenderness around the outside of the ankle, pain behind the ankle bone, pain that transmits from the ankle down into the foot. The use of magnetic resonance imaging (MRI) or ultrasound can be helpful when identifying and diagnosing peroneal tendon injuries and disorders. These imaging techniques offer a more complete look at the peroneal tendons, noted Philbin. One might consider getting an MRI or ultrasound, especially if you have chronic ankle pain. If the condition is caught early, non-operative treatment options can include rest, ice and elevation, anti-inflammatory medication, immobilization in a cast or brace, physical therapy. More serious injuries of the peroneal tendons, including tears or ruptures, will very likely require surgery. Peroneal tendon injuries can happen suddenly or can develop over time. The injury is most common among athletes involved in sports that require repetitive ankle motion and in individuals who have high arches of the foot. A proper diagnosis is essential in order to treat peroneal tendon injuries correctly and to help alleviate chronic pain. Philbin reminds patients, if you have ankle pain and it is not getting better, do not ignore it. Get it evaluated by a physician who has experience treating foot and ankle injuries. Terence Philbin, DO, and the co-authors of this article received no compensation for this review article. School children who nap are happier, excel academically, and have fewer behavioral problems. Ask just about any parent whether napping has benefits and you'll likely hear a resounding yes, particularly for the child's mood, energy levels, and school performance. New research from the University of Pennsylvania and the University of California, Irvine, published in the journal Sleep, backs up that parental insight. A study of nearly 3,000 4th, 5th, and 6th graders ages 10 to 12 revealed a connection between midday napping and greater happiness, self-control, and grit, fewer behavioral problems, and higher IQ, the latter particularly for the 6th graders. The most robust findings were associated with academic achievement, says Penn neurocriminologist Adrian Rain, a co-author on the paper. Children who napped 3 or more times per week benefit from a 7.6% increase in academic performance in grade 6, he says. How many kids at school would not want their scores to go up by 7.6 points out of 100? Sleep deficiency and daytime drowsiness are surprisingly widespread, with drowsiness affecting up to 20% of all children, says lead author on the study Zhonghong Liu, a Penn Associate Professor of Nursing and Public Health. What's more, the negative cognitive, emotional, and physical effects of poor sleep habits are well established, and yet most previous research has focused on preschool age and younger. That's partially because in places like the United States, napping stops altogether as children get older. In China, however, the practice is embedded into daily life, continuing through elementary and middle school, even into adulthood. So, Liu and Rain, with Penn biostatistician Rui Feng, UC Irvine sleep researcher Sarah Mednick and others, turned to the China Jintan cohort study, established in 2004 to follow participants from toddlerhood through adolescence. From each of 2,928 children, the researchers collected data about napping frequency and duration once the children hit grades 4 through 6, as well as outcome data when they reached grade 6, including psychological measures like grit and happiness and physical measures such as body mass index and glucose levels. They also asked teachers to provide behavioral and academic information about each student. They then analyzed associations between each outcome and napping, adjusting for sex, grade, school location, parental education, and nightly time in bed. It was the first comprehensive study of its kind, Mednick says. Many lab studies across all ages have demonstrated that naps can show the same magnitude of improvement as a full night of sleep on discrete cognitive tasks. Here, we had the chance to ask real-world, adolescent schoolchildren questions across a wide range of behavioral, academic, social, and physiological measures. Predictably, she adds, the more students sleep during the day, the greater the benefit of naps on many of these measures. Though the findings are correlational, the researchers say they may offer an alternative to the outcry from pediatricians and public health officials for later school start times. The midday nap is easily implemented, and it costs nothing, says Liu, particularly if accompanied by a slightly later end to the day, to avoid cutting into educational time. Not only will this help the kids, but it also takes away time for screen use, which is related to a lot of mixed outcomes. Future directions could look at why, for example, children with better educated parents nap more than children with less educated parents, or whether, by investigating the influence of culture and personality, nap interventions could be advanced on a global scale. Ideally, a randomized control trial would get at causation questions like whether napping leads to better academic achievement or whether they're linked in some other way. However, none of this is yet in the works. For now, the researchers say they hope the results of this current study can inform future interventional work that targets adolescent sleepiness. Funding for the work came from the National Institutes of Health, National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences, grants R01ESO18858, K02ESO19878, and K01ESO15877, and the National Institute on Aging, grant R01AGO46646. Belief in learning styles myth may be detrimental. Many people, including educators, believe learning styles are set at birth and predict both academic and career success even though there is no scientific evidence to support this common myth, according to new research published by the American Psychological Association. In 2 online experiments with 668 participants, more than 90% of them believed people learn better if they are taught in their predominant learning style, whether that is visual, auditory or tactile. But those who believed in learning styles split evenly into an essentialist group, with more strongly held beliefs, and a non-essentialist group, with more flexible beliefs about learning styles, said lead researcher Shailene Nanskavil, Ph.D., a visiting scholar at the University of Michigan. We found that some people are more likely to believe that students inherit their learning style from their parents and that learning styles affect brain function, she said. We also found that educators who work with younger children are more likely to hold this essentialist view. Many parents and educators may be wasting time and money on products, services and teaching methods that are geared toward learning styles. In their responses to survey questions, the essentialist group members were more likely to state that learning styles are heritable, instantiated in the brain, don't change with age, mark distinct kinds of people, and predict both academic and career success. The non-essentialist group held looser beliefs about learning styles, viewing them as malleable, overlapping and more determined by environmental factors. The research was published online in the Journal of Educational Psychology. Psychological essentialism is the belief that certain categories of people have a true nature that is biologically based and highly predictive of many factors in their lives. People with essentialist opinions about learning styles may be more resistant to changing their strongly held views even when they learn that numerous studies have debunked the concept of learning styles, Nanskavil said. Previous research has shown that the learning styles model can undermine education in many ways. Educators spend time and money tailoring lessons to certain learning styles for different students, even though all students would benefit from learning through various methods. Students study in ways that match their perceived learning style even though it won't help them succeed. Some teacher certification programs incorporate learning styles into their courses, which perpetuates the myth for the next generation of teachers. Academic support centers and a plethora of products also are focused on learning styles, despite the lack of scientific evidence supporting them. The first experiment included participants from the general U.S. workforce, including educators. The second experiment was weighted so that at least half of the participants were educators to provide a better understanding of their views. The small percentage of participants who didn't believe in learning styles weren't included in the analysis because the study was examining differing beliefs about learning styles. Demographic factors such as race, gender, parental status and income level didn't affect people's views on learning styles in the study, but educators of young children were more likely to have essentialist beliefs. My biggest concern is that time is being spent teaching young children maladaptive strategies for learning, Nanskavil said. It is important that children from a very young age are taught with the best practices so they will succeed. Previous surveys in the United States and other industrialized countries across the world have shown that 80% to 95% of people believe in learning styles. It's difficult to say how that myth became so widespread, Nanskavil said. It seems likely that the appeal of the learning styles myth rests in its fit with the way people like to think about behavior, she said. People prefer brain-based accounts of behavior, and they like to categorize people into types. Learning styles allow people to do both of those things. Could my child have autism? 10 signs of possible autism-related delays in 6 to 12-month-old children. Though autism is often not diagnosed until the age of 3, some children begin to show signs of developmental delay before they turn a year old. While not all infants and toddlers with delays will develop autism spectrum disorders, ASD, experts point to early detection of these signs as key to capitalizing on early diagnosis and intervention, which is believed to improve developmental outcomes. According to Dr. Rebecca Landa, director of the Center for Autism and Related Disorders at the Kennedy Krieger Institute in Baltimore, Maryland, parents need to be empowered to identify the warning signs of ASD and other communication delays. We want to encourage parents to become good observers of their children's development so that they can see the earliest indicators of delays in a baby's communication, social and motor skills, says Dr. Landa, who also cautions that some children who develop ASD don't show signs until after the second birthday or regress after appearing to develop typically. For the past decade, Dr. Landa has followed infant siblings of children with autism to identify red flags of the disorder in their earliest form. Her research has shown that diagnosis is possible in some children as young as 14 months and sparked the development of early intervention models that have been shown to improve outcomes for toddlers showing signs of ASD as young as 1 and 2 years old. Dr. Landa recommends that as parents play with their infant 6-12 months, they look for the following signs that have been linked to later diagnosis of ASD or other communication disorders. 1. Rarely smiles when approached by caregivers. 2. Rarely tries to imitate sounds and movements others make, such as smiling and laughing, during simple social exchanges. 3. Delayed or infrequent babbling. 4. Does not respond to his or her name with increasing consistency from 6-12 months. 5. Does not gesture to communicate by 10 months. 6. Poor eye contact. 7. Seeks your attention infrequently. 8. Repeatedly stiffens arms, hands, legs or displays unusual body movements such as rotating the hands on the wrists, uncommon postures or other repetitive behaviors. 9. Does not reach up toward you when you reach to pick him or her up. 10. Delays in motor development, including delayed rolling over, pushing up and crawling. If parents suspect something is wrong with their child's development, or that their child is losing skills, they should talk to their pediatrician or another developmental expert, says Dr. Landa. Don't adopt a wait-and-see perspective. We want to identify delays early in development so that intervention can begin when children's brains are more malleable and still developing their circuitry.